all?
There we go. We can hear you again.
Okay. Okay. So this is my email, Chelsea Swift, whiteboardclinic.org. Also, you can contact me later via Ashley if you want. And this content is coming from this document that has been used at Whiteboard Clinic. I don't know how long. All I have ever done to the document is change it from Comic Sans to Times New Roman, and like updated some like pronoun and like consent language stuff. So it's very fun to like kind of shorten it into this PowerPoint, which is going to be pretty bare bones, and I'll have Ashley send you the Times New Roman version after as well. And this is also very different for me because I am just like very movement, so much hand motions, and really like to kind of provide physical examples usually during this training. So I found a lot of photos by like Googling my own job that I hope will demonstrate like the idea here. So this is my first time doing this via PowerPoint, but I give this training all the time. I can be pretty like wordy and kind of speak fast. So you have the captions, and also we'll provide the written materials later to kind of refer back to. So I'm just gonna get started by clicking. So just for context, Whitebird Clinic started in 1969 as a crisis center in our community. Eugene has always had a pretty profound homeless population. Even then, right now we have the highest per capita homeless population in the entire country. We also have the highest co-usage rates of meth and heroin in the country. And out of that, we stay busy and don't have enough services. And so Whitebird started like literally what it sounds. It was hippies who lived on a commune together and doctors from the University of Oregon who came together in an old house, and people started coming there who were generally in like substance related crisis. Psychedelics were of course like a big part of the origin work of Whitebird Clinic. And through that, it kind of became apparent, like out of this kind of like, oh, we could do this in like an alternative way, that Whitebird Clinic started offering, made a medical clinic and a dental clinic and an ongoing counseling department, and behavioral health, case management. And CAHOOTS was born out of our 24/7 crisis clinic phone service and folks who walked in. So we realized that there were a lot of people, whether due to like barriers or agoraphobia or just like trauma within other systems, that we could capture people by going out in a station wagon is how that started. And somehow in 1989, that led to conversations with the police who were always bringing people to our agency instead of to the jail or hospital. So they formalized that partnership to also work in the field. And there's a like very funny video made in the 70s of our clinic then, and another kind of video about our agency from a few years ago that I'll put in the chat later, that I also dropped in there last week. So a really, really, and I'm going to say this like 100 times because every slide is so dumbed down that it's all the most important things, but least intervention necessary. All of the things that we're going to talk about are to support how we can show up for someone or a group of people in crisis and provide the advocacy and support and the like privilege of communication and navigation and knowledge of services and their institutions, and what person is a jerk if you do the intake on Tuesday and the really wonderful person works on Wednesday. So we are always trying to create the least intervention necessary as to like enable folks to get their own needs met, whether or not we are there, and that we are not the experts of what is needed. So it's a very collaborative approach, And then something I think to mention too is that our model is always a team of two. It's a crisis worker and medic model. I am a cross-trained human, so I do both, or one or the other, depending on who I'm working with. So a lot of this will be talking about like how to interact in a team of two. Yeah. Okay, so I took this training when I started at Wiper Clinic like 5.5 years ago, and I had done a lot of street outreach in Haight-Ashbury, working for like a needle exchange, and it was called the Homeless Youth Alliance. And I was excited because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to learn like the exact perfect, wonderful skills and things you say. And like when X situation happens, or like every suicide intervention must be the same. And then I got like a bunch of hippie stuff just like thrown in my face. And I was like, this is so unhelpful. I will literally never have a meditation practice in my life. I don't know what you're taught. Okay, now what? Was like a really big feeling for me. So I have like, now after many years, like in my life, have tried to kind of like make this feel more practical. And so it does start as like, we are the only tool. And when I'm a crisis worker, like my body and brain are literally the only tool that I am showing up to these 24,000 situations that possibly in another community, an officer would be showing up who has like 9,000 tools attached to their vest and more weapons in their car, and like, let's get the Bearcat on the way, and let's get all my other like officers here, and let's get a show of force, let's get our shields, let's get our non-lethal, like, so when you have very few tools, especially all of us living in a world bereft of the capacity of any resource that any of us need, you have to spend more time. You have to be patient. You have to be a listener. And yeah, so this is the hippie thing where it's like, oh, like grounding, like be your best self. Like, are you tired? Do you need to eat? And I really apply that in the way of like, I know that when people are profoundly struggling, like, why are they profoundly struggling? Generally, because really compounded lack of sleeping, eating, rights to human rights, ability to use a bathroom, ability to access healthcare. So these basic needs, if I believe that for the people that I'm showing up for every day, I have to believe that for myself. So take that hippie shit, apply it in a practical way, and take care of yourself and others. Blah, blah, blah. How can you show up for other people if you don't show up for yourself? And within that, what I also want to say, I know this is a little bit off topic from the things that are written on this slide, but that when we have these conversations about how we're feeling in a day, what we feel like we cannot show up for, perhaps in an ongoing process. For me, when I was training, like I had a really hard time with like feeling inexperienced with suicidal ideation counseling. I had a hard time de-escalating teenagers because that just wasn't my experience. So my partners knew that, so that it wasn't when we heard the call on the radio, we have a suicidal teenager on top of the bleachers of his high school. It wasn't then that I had to be like, oh my God, I need you to support me even though you're the medic, because this totally freaks me out. If I set up that communication beforehand about what I feel like I could and should show up for, then we aren't having to have those conversations only when we're in crisis. It doesn't have to be on somebody's bad day that's the first time they're saying that they're having a bad day. So we try to be vulnerable in those basic human needs and personal needs, and like how we are perceived. Like some of my coworkers who know that they are like very tall, large statured white men who have a lot of training from working for a fire department before. So we talk a lot about that and modify how we can to be an appropriate force. So I use this photo of us with the radio because I mean, you can see me and I don't think I look like a cop, and I'm wearing a tank top because I'm in the office attic and it's actually quite warm outside. But generally, like, I am just looking like this. I'm wearing a t-shirt and I walk up and people see this radio and they freak out because, and they ask me if I'm a cop. They think I'm a security guard. They think I'm um like any evil person who's usually we see wearing a radio in their life who might have been a use of force, like someone that they're perceiving as power structure. And it like blows my mind, but also like the exact reason I got into this work was because I felt really called to like use my privilege and lack of trauma within these systems to be an advocate. So assume nothing. Also, like, the exact people that I often think I like should be the one showing up for, no assumptions. They might turn to that giant white man, even though they're like this like cute little like queer baby trans that I want to like be best friends with, and they hate me. So um we yeah, we're always thinking about that and always adjusting and always being aware. I included this quote from the Wall Street Journal because ever since they cited that we wear hoodies, like every interview we do with like national news is like, and we hear you wear hoodies. And that's profound. And I I get it also, like nobody told the reporter to notice this, but he spent a ride along seeing us like showing up in these spaces wearing hoodies. And this was like literally in paragraph 2 of this giant article. And that's something that I forget of like, oh yeah, wow, that is kind of profound. Um, I remember when I moved to Eugene, the first time I ever saw CAHOOTS out in the field, I saw what they were wearing, and they were like squatting and talking and looking up at somebody who is sitting on a window eave. I don't know why this story makes me emotional, but it does, because I just like, I was like, oh my God, it's them. They're doing the thing. Like I knew about the program, but just immediately when I saw it, my eyes were like, that's different. Um, yeah, so I focus, I think, a lot on presentation and body language, maybe even more than some of my coworkers think about it. Um, so grounding. Um, Again, this is the one that didn't feel like totally approachable or something I wanted to talk about with clients really until I took EMT course like a year and a half ago, and was just reminded that this is as simple as like accessing your like smart, beautiful brain that knows what to do. And is based on your experience, your life experience. You know how to talk, you know how to be socialized, and then you get into a scary experience and it's like, hello, I am really activated and I now literally forgot how to ask, how are you? I am working at a harm reduction program for years and years. I did Narcan trainings all day, all night. The first time I Narcaned somebody, I forgot like step 1, which is I went straight to Narcan without rescue breathing because I got really activated and was like, oh my God, I have to do this thing and I'm an EMT, even though this is something that I've been an expert on. So within that, like for me, this doesn't, like I said, look like this like meditation practice. I don't try to like sit there and hold hands with my partner before we enter a call. But it really just looks like taking a breath. And with this question at the end, if I don't feel like I have time to take that breath, then CAHOOTS might not be the adequate response. And we can't throw ourselves in to something without that, at least that breath, because we will make bad decisions. We do make bad decisions, and we are going to create an unsafe situation for ourselves in smart or in small and big ways. And so also that's why we don't do things like running, because I might be like, oh my God, overdose, finally, I've talked about Narcan for years and years. And then I run with the Narcan kit, and I have now jacked my heart rate up. I'm now breathing fast. I'm now sweating, and whether or not I was anxious before, I've literally created that physiology in my body, and now I am going to like literally have to catch my breath to even do the thing that I was showing up to do, and I've wasted the time that I thought I saved by running in the first place. So you'll notice it in theory and in our community that the fire department and emergency medical services, they never run. Sometimes you'll see CAHOOTS doing like a light jog, but we're often like getting people out of the, like the roadway and stuff. So as someone who needed a formula, I have created one. Also, I'm going to pause. Can you hear this horrible squeak that my chair is making?
Yeah, you can hear it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to like turn into another horrible chair behind me. One sec.
Okay. It's not that bad. It kind of sounds like maybe you have like a mouse in oh yeah, somebody says it's okay. Yeah, it sounds like you have a nice mouse living with you.
Okay. We'll see what happens here. It's because I can't like keep my body still. Okay, so this is like a total like Swift thing. No one has like taught me this, and it's not in the Comic Sans / Times New Roman thing. But I like cannot recommend enough this order of build rapport, validate, and then set a boundary. So that might, for me, look like showing up to a call where somebody has kind of set up camp in a coffee shop bathroom because they don't have access to a bathroom and showers. And so now they are kind of bird bathing in the sink, and they're maybe sorting all their belongings and taking advantage of this safe space. And coffee shop employee has not gotten our wonderful training, and so calls us. And police might walk in, or the untrained coffee shop worker might be like, we need you to come out of the bathroom right now. Like, hi, how are you? Maybe, but knock, knock, you need to come out now. That is going to immediately set a defensive environment, because in that person's world, it is extremely, extremely valid that bathroom is the best, most practical, most safe environment for them to be in right now. And to kind of meet somebody at the climax and say, like, totally dismiss them is to like ultimately set somebody off, like to create some sort of reaction where suddenly now like you are fighting for your own dignity of where you are at or the choices you have made. So in that situation, I'm going to be like, knock, knock, hey, it's CAHOOTS. Like, how are you doing? Like, we heard that you've been in a bathroom for a while. Like, is that true? I don't know. That's what they're just telling me. And maybe they open the door, maybe they don't. So maybe I'm like stating like, hey, like if you're not familiar with us, like we're not going to force you to come out. We're not going to like violate your boundaries. We're not going to try to embarrass you, but we do just kind of need to have a conversation. I might like say some things about myself, or like, just poke for a conversation just to build rapport. Ideally, then I'm engaged with that person in a more real way, and they're telling me like, oh, well, yeah, I have been in here for 20 minutes, but this is my best option for all of the needs I'm getting met in there. And then I give the classic like, yeah, that's super real. I totally get it. And we might do that for a little bit longer. We might talk about like, yeah, I know it's totally insane that there's only one day center to get showers here. Like I would love to advocate for you there if I can, because I like see that's a really huge need for you. And then I'm gonna go to like but we can't do it here. So do you think we could like step outside and we could kind of make a plan around this? If I'm not getting bites, it might be like, can I give you a cigarette outside? Like, what can I do to kind of like jam all of the build rapport, validate, and get that boundary in there? Um, this is like the patience and time that I have to give, and to stay in that parasympathetic nervous system. It is a lot easier to come in and say, knock, knock, you're coming out, or like, it's going to be a different conversation. That is the quick reaction to have. So in a way, I have to like depersonalize to not have the reaction that I would have outside of my role. And it has made me a very like patient and different person, like physiologically doing this work, which sometimes looks like not having any ounce of patience outside of work, and going to therapy about that. So um I have like a really wonderful coworker who used this example once, like the story arc example, kind of showing that like when you get to the climax or the crisis, like 75% of the issue has already happened. So if you're just approaching the crisis, like you are not a part of this story. And and we might start offering things. I do this all the time because I want to like get in there and be helpful. And I might offer something that is like totally triggering. And now I've just created an inciting incident and we're moving backwards. And that might look like suggesting bringing someone to the hospital who was there recently and had a really traumatic experience. And in my mind, like the hospital helps. I have personal relationships with all the nurses. I know even the ones who are kind of jerks, like I could be like, hey, how are you? Yeah, you like me. I like you. You scratch my back. Can you be nice to this person? Awesome. Here's my wonderful transfer of care where I communicate everything that's going on in the vitals and the 5,000 things we tried before we got them to the emergency room. This truly is the best option. And what I will say, and I'll touch on this later, is that within this, being direct and having boundaries is like extremely therapeutic and a really good thing to do. And so when I'm validating and building rapport, if somebody is offensive to me, I'm going to call it out and I'm going to keep working with them, knowing that like the next time they might say the same thing to somebody on the street or to a system of power, that they could be getting arrested or fought with, versus me, I address it, say that's inappropriate. What can we do for you? Yeah, that also might look like if that person's not coming out of the bathroom saying like, okay, well, I'm going to give you 5 minutes and I'm going to knock again. And then if we're still kind of where we're at, then I might, the employee might get the key. And if that doesn't work, like we have to talk about like what they want to do to kind of make this situation end. We would love to work with you. So kind of always stating along the way what might happen if we can't engage in the boundary and plan making part of the conversation to get to a resolution. Okay, body language, we're in, baby. So I love this example. I also love Ashley has like the best faces that will happen in this slideshow. So and I think like, they might be a little closer than I want, but also perspective is hard. So 2 arms lengths apart between Ashley and the client. Also, I like go back and forth on using like the client / human / community member. So I'm using client as it relates to my work, and also that word comes with implications that are bad and irrelevant at times. So 2 arms lengths apart means I want to be able to put out my arm, and I want the other person that I'm speaking with to put out their arm, and I don't want to be able to like touch them. And that's for like, if arms are swinging, and it's also to be at a safe and comfortable distance from the other person. Um, and we always want hands visible, always hands visible. Um, it can feel extremely comfortable to cross our arms, or we're cold, or I, yeah, have coworkers that are like, oh, it just makes me feel smaller. And I'm like, you look like a terrifying security guard who's standing above me while I'm trying to counsel a child. So I need you to stop crossing your arms. Um, a lot of my work is showing, like literally showing off on a doorstep of somebody who never wanted CAHOOTS, has never heard of CAHOOTS, maybe thinks CAHOOTS is the big white van that can throw them in to the vehicle and take them to a non-existent mental health facility that's going to lock them up for 72 hours. So this is huge in our safety. Like, this is not just like, oh, like make yourself approachable. This is what keeps me safe. And in this situation, so Christian, who is behind Ashley, who is the dude there, he's engaging in the client. And also throughout this intervention, he's going to be kind of looking around, scanning the scene, and provide the set of eyes so that Ashley, as the counselor, can stay engaged in her like beautiful, empathetic little face that this person is getting. And I am like such a huge fan. You'll see some examples throughout of both partners being like sitting on the same side as each other. It communicates like a united team. It communicates like we're both here for you. And it also communicates like we're going to be showing up as a team. You don't get to say like, oh, I only want to talk to you and he needs to like go away. Like, we'll modify, but it also it shows that there's a partnership, which kind of is different. Like, here cops are riding around solo, therapist is solo, so it also distinguishes us as like problem solvers and helpers. And yeah, these people look like engaged and calm, and we like, nobody has ever calmed down in the world by being told like, hey, calm down. And nobody in the world has ever been like able to relax by being told like, just take a deep breath. So I don't say those things, but I want to communicate that with my body, and sometimes like just kind of over exaggerate things. So I might like over exaggerate like the nod, or I might like just do some like audible breaths. I'm not telling somebody to breathe, but I'm just gonna like overcompensate to like get their like nervous system, body, neurons, whatever, like metaphysical, like whatever I can do to try to interact with like their more escalated energy. Cool. I have not officially trademarked, but this is my term, the empathy squat. And not all bodies are able to do this, but also like a quick Google search and you will find CAHOOTS workers squatting all over town. And also apparently a lot of the folks that we work with that people like to photograph are of course like unhoused folks or people who are outside. And this is a distinguishment. Like, I love showing up for people in this way. I love doing this, especially like I could be on a call with like five firefighters and a few police officers, and they're kind of standing around with somebody and they're trying to figure out how to help, but they're not getting there. I show up, I just kind of like breeze past, address the client, and a minute we're having the conversation that nobody else could have. And that it's kind of like a cool way of modeling in front of those agencies or in front of the public. Like, I love to show up empathetically for people who didn't expect it. So it can be a really like powerful tool kind of in all directions of how we perceive ourselves, how the client perceives us, how another agency perceives us, and how the public does. Ashley, do you feel like we should pause for a sec?
Yeah, well, I just have one question from the audience.
Oh, okay,
And
cool.
it's from the previous slide. There is a bullet point about no splitting of eye contact. And yeah, what does that mean?
Oh, totally. So in this situation, I mean, it would be like quite dramatic, but if on a bench, if Christian was sitting on the other side of the client is literally having to do this. Something that more directly might be like that is like if I'm sitting here and I have a CAHOOTS worker here and a CAHOOTS worker here. And it's kind of also thinking about like, okay, what are you mimicking when you're making somebody do that? You're making them like have to like maybe be a little hyper vigilant, or maybe we want them to really be like focused with us so that they are not like distracted by surroundings. We need them to like make the decision with me, come on. And I want to support myself and getting that need met too. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
Cool.
We have another question. Someone wondering if you try to have varying gender identities in your teams. Yeah, like just generally how are your teams put together?
I'm it's really dependent on availability at this time. And I think by nature of like who shows up for this work, like we do end up, we are certainly very gender diverse, and diverse in not enough ways as well, and that like limits our accessibility. Um, and sometimes we get the like gender specific requests. I would say that's like the only specific like identity or whatever related type of request we would get. Um, I also, with this training and our experience, you know, sometimes that request cannot be met, and this is when we're going to start to like really overcompensate and problem solve. And we also can kind of refer to like we have our crisis phone line. How can we connect? So we might just be more problem solvers than like the primary care providers or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, can I ask one more question? This is just mine. You know, so a lot of us who are watching this, we might be solo responding to crises. And I
Yeah.
wonder, I don't know if you touch on that later, but man, it is good to go into a crisis with more than one person. I'm just thinking about the latest thing that happened in my neighborhood where my partner came out with me. And it was so good just to have two people. It changes the dynamic somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, we'll talk about that more. I don't know. I I don't think I directly address like the showing up as a single human. I do think this all applies and requires a lot more like, am I the right person for this? I also think this speaks a lot to like crisis versus perhaps um like conflict mediation. I mean, that being said, like, oh my God, when I see somebody like popping off at a waitress or a like employee at the airport, like I am going to get in there. Um, Something that I really like as an individual in that situation is to not really approach the escalator. Like, I'm not going to go up to that person and be like, hey, you need to back off. I am going to turn to the person that I'm being perceived as being like harassed or bullied, or maybe I'm like wanting to cop watch. I'm not going to address the cops. And in my version of that, I think there's also some other tactics around this on sort of showing up. But I'm going to go straight to the human, like, hey, what's your name? Okay, like, do you want to get out of here, like, can I, and kind of just like direct my body towards the person that I'm trying to advocate for. And also that allows me to get a read on if they want or need that help, and that I'm not just like trying to be a hero of a situation too. So that's like can be a cool tactic, single or double. That's also like when we see clients fighting, I'm going to look for the person who I know their name, and I'm not going to get in between them. I'm just going to try to start saying their name, try to get their eye contact, and try to like pull them away physically. So as much as possible, as much, again, just kind of simple line of sight, if you can kind of start to manipulate the situation, without getting in between an escalated situation, but also maybe kind of creating a barrier in situations where it's not necessarily a matter of safety, can be huge, kind of making the stimuli in the world smaller.
Yeah, thanks. That's a really good way of putting it. Okay, thanks. I'll let you
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I know it's hard talking to a void. Just know you are being listened to and appreciated. That's all
Oh,
bye.
no, it's great. No, it's super good. I don't feel weird. Rarely. Okay, so we talked about kind of coming to the level. This is like, so as like a harm reductionist, I came to this work with like meeting people where they're at, getting on their level, like working with street kids on Haight-Ashbury, and like what is like the ways that I can tap into like kind of how they negotiate problem solving and communication and like social status. And sometimes it's as simple as literally physically meeting them where they are at. Getting on their level literally means getting on their level. On this like bottom left photo, Dandy on the left here is like kind of doing the stand lean. I would say this is kind of how we're going to approach a situation before we commit to squatting. We do the empathy squat, so that way if something gets unsafe, we're on our feet and we can back out much faster than if we've committed to kneeling. So if we're kneeling, we have to go leg up, back out, start walking. If I'm squatting, I'm standing up and I'm taking steps in one motion. And those moments and taking space are extremely important in maintaining the rapport, and it's like an ebb and flow thing. In this situation, Dandy on the left is the crisis worker, and they are like out with the tackle box about to do a medical thing in a quite busy park. So Dandy's going to kind of remain standing and doing that scene safety stuff. And also maybe we have people who are coming up to us and asking for other things. So they're going to be the person who kind of goes to the periphery and asks people to take space for confidentiality and maintains the confidentiality for the client. Yeah, so on the bottom right corner, approaching a sleeping subject. So a huge call for CAHOOTS is a welfare check on a subject down, which more than likely is somebody who's sleeping on the sidewalk because that is their best option, which is horrific, usually. So like the way they're coming in is from the feet of that client. And we're going to start like 10 paces back. We're going to say, hey, it's CAHOOTS. Hey, it's CAHOOTS. See if we can get a verbal response. If the verbal response doesn't happen, we're going to get closer and be like, hey, we're not trying to bother you. I'm constantly saying out loud what I am doing. Okay, like we're just going to walk a little bit closer. We're just kind of worried about you. Can't really tell if you're breathing under the blanket. Since you're not responding, I'm just going to tap your foot. So first we go like foot to foot. And we're standing and we're going to like try to just wiggle the person's foot. And if that's not doing something, then maybe medic is going to kind of move more into like medical assessment, where they're going to try to do like a pain stimuli and start doing their like, is this person conscious breathing? Where do we have to go from here? So in these moments, communicating what you are doing is like hugely felt by people. So this like like funny shout out, this officer these are pictures of EPD, and the person on the right used to be a CAHOOTS worker for a very, very, very long time and became a cop. So you can see he carried his training into his police work. And when I look at these images with a similar population, it feels different. So take that for what it is, but it's a difference that we can model, maybe, hopefully. Again, so meeting people where they are at is like location, positioning, and language. This is like another kind of like wine mom, like it could be on like a poster in your therapist's office. Like people will remember how you made them feel, not what you said. So you can say all the best things in the world, and if you're standing there with your arms folded, the person might not hear a single word you said, or might not remember you as a kind, empathetic, caring person, even though you are applying all of the best, wonderful skills that you have. So that is why all of this needs to be considered. This last piece, can you have unconditional positive regard for everyone, regardless of their behavior? This is like, I have to show up like this. Ethically, I also believe this in a deeply personal way. In the way I kind of like move through the world, at least, like in human interaction. But I have to have positive regard, or else I'm not controlling my nervous system. And the thing that I might like shout back at somebody if they're like catcalling me on the street, I can't do when I am at work, because that doesn't actually line up with how I know that that is like a survival skill. That is a way to get engagement. That is a way for people to interact that is appropriate or common within their world that they live in. So body language, what not to do. This is like the worst picture ever. So all these people are too close. All of these people are blocking this human's exit in an extremely profound way. Everyone is giving eye contact from all directions, giving a person a really big audience. We have the officer doing like the T-Rex. I don't know if other police departments do this, but this is like a Eugene thing, because they wear the vests at all times and they always tuck their little hands into their vests, and it's just like bizarre. I think it's casual for them, and I read it as bizarre, and it's like hiding your hands creates suspicion at baseline. So no running for the reasons we talked about before, and seriously, like, no crossing your arms, no hands in pockets, no hands behind your back. Like, you might think you're being respectful. Maybe you're like in the fire department or the military, you're going to kind of like stand at attention. And the person standing there is wondering like, what tiny swords are you holding behind your back or in your pockets that you're just waiting to get out? So this is another one of those things where like, you can be saying all the best, most wonderful things in the world, and the whole time the person is just thinking like, oh my God, I just need to get this over with, because those tiny swords are going to come out at any time. So I just need to run. I need to bail. Okay. Touch and consent. Don't assume somebody needs help. Don't like offer to walk somebody across the street who appears like alter abled or maybe like vision impaired. Don't assume that people need touch. Don't come up to somebody and shake them because you think they are ill or whatever. So we always ask before touching anyone, and we ask that same in return. And maybe, you know, that looks like gentle redirection or like a hard boundary, and we like, okay, like we're gonna step way back, and maybe we need to start over at that like more than 2 arms length before we can come back in and make sure that we are kind of meeting where this person needs to be in terms of like space and boundaries to get to the end game that we need to. In a medical situation, that explicit consent may not always be there, but we may have a duty to act. And that's where we're going back to that, like, okay, like I'm going to move you into the recovery position. I'm going to check your blood pressure now. I'm going to check your CBG. So I am communicating that all of the way through. And I'm being extremely prepared for the disposition of the person to change at any time. So whether that's from unconscious to conscious, or maybe kind of like playing possum, which is absolutely appropriate when you live in a town where like every good liberal on their way to work is like walking by and being like, are you okay? Are you okay? And you like finally are just getting some rest on the sidewalk, and you just like need to learn to tune that out. That is a very important survival skill. Okay, removing an audience. This is another weird picture. So this was at a protest last year, Oregon has a pretty profound white nationalist presence. And so this was at a protest where like CAHOOTS workers were trying to stand by as kind of, I think, like curious bystanders, and kind of making sure there wasn't an escalation in like whatever capacity. And like, this is a wall of people wearing radios and giving an audience, and maybe for some people this will totally ramp them up. For some humans, the only attention they got from a parent or an adult in charge was when they were crying, and they could bring the good report card home. They could draw a picture and put it on the fridge. Parent didn't care. So they developed behaviors that got them the love and attention that their like tiny brains and bodies needed. And so I am really big about removing an audience when we can. We definitely have like the helpful caller dynamic is really intense. There's like my coworker said this once, and it's just like really funny, so I'm going to share. But ACAB, all callers are bad, because they want to like over give you information. They're like, oh, well, we're calling you because first he was here, and then he was here, and now he's doing this thing, but before he's doing this thing. And it's like, well, right now I need to deal with the fact that he is like pouring water on himself and it's freezing, and I can talk to you soon. So if that's not possible, maybe I'm in like a really busy cafe again. So I have that person in the bathroom, and I know that an audience could be a total barrier to somebody coming out at all. I know that it could be a reason for them to escalate, again, kind of giving them a hill to die on in some way. So if I can remove the audience by asking someone to like do that tool of like, hey, like, why don't we go outside and talk about it? Like, screw these guys. I don't, like, this doesn't feel good to me. I don't want to like give them the pleasure of having to witness this. Like, I just want to talk to you one-on-one. So then I'm getting the need met and doing things that I know I think feel good for the human. When that is not possible, so Whitebird Clinic does rock medicine, which is a lot of psychedelic counseling. So at Oregon Country Fair, which is like a wild hippie adventure, choose your own adventure festival. So when I have somebody who's like in the middle of the crowd, like in the fetal position, naked and on acid, and I have every other person who's tripping who like wants and needs to help, and they're right here, I'm gonna grab some of my like Whitebird coworkers, and I might try to help them build a wall. Maybe it's like a youth who's naked, and I really want to respect their right to like modesty and respect. Maybe I'm going to task some of those wildly interested trippers and be like, I really need you to stand there. And if you're worried about the dinosaur coming, can you please kind of hold your ground? But like, can you do it like 20 feet away? So that way it's really clear like what you're showing up for. So I love to give fake people tasks. You're the caller, you're super invested. Great. Can you go wait over there and wave down the fire department when they come? That like totally doesn't need to happen. But too many people can be unhelpful. So importance of teams of two, safety. So this is like an example of, I can tell that the person in the van is doing some like wound care and a medical assessment. I love the face that Amy is making here. But she is outside of the van. She's allowing for that privacy to take place while also not overwhelming inside the van the client that we're working with, and maintaining really important eyes for safety. What does the public see? So here's Ashley's facial expressions again. This is what we call face crimes. So just because a client can't see it, I mean, in this case, I think they are like really being emotive, which is why it ended up in whatever newspaper that it did. But I might be like talking to someone and be like, yeah, great. And then when they look away, I look at my partner like, oh my God, what are we going to do about this? someone might see CAHOOTS for the first time, and that's the only facial expression they've ever seen any CAHOOTS worker make. So we have to really think about that. One time I found a missing person in a Target, and I was like so amazed. And they had eloped from a adult foster home, or actually like a secure facility that they were committed to. And it was like felt like a really huge deal, a really cool CAHOOTS call. And that person was not able to like make the decision to not be in Target anymore and not you know, be less psychotic in a dangerous way. So in our county, or in Oregon, we have no 5150, we have no 72-hour hold. And in our work, the only people that we can call in the field to put somebody on a hold is law enforcement. So in that situation, we had to call law enforcement, who then had to remove the person from the Target. They came out in handcuffs. I know this means the person's going to hospital. I am so excited that I high-fived my coworker, and then I'm in a busy Target parking lot like, oh my God, the public just thinks I just high-fived that this obviously mental like health crisis is ending in arrest. So that's kind of another thing to think about. So voice and language. Example I always give is like, AT&T has double charged you. Again, every month this happens. You went through 5,000 levels of phone tree and you just got off of like 6 hours of hold of unemployment. And then you finally get the person on the phone and they're like, hi, my name is Sarah, and it is so great to talk to you, Chelsea. How can I help you today? And I just want to like scream at them, because that is not where I'm at. That is not, no, we are well beyond how are you today? Like, I will tell you what is up, and it is not how you are doing, because you sound very calm. So we use like scaffolding. What I call it is match and slide. So I think there's kind of this perception, and even in our work, that like we do come in and kind of like try to like hold hands with people and be with them. And that is not going to like penetrate somebody's world who is having a much more like loud, explosive, or angry, or just like in it mode. And if I come up to somebody like speaking like that, I am saying without saying like, this isn't a big deal. So if I need to like get someone to engage with me who is not able to or not wanting to, I'm going to be like, hey, it's CAHOOTS. I get it. I want to help you. I need you to get off that statue though. So I'm going to start where they are, and I'm going to try to slide down and try to model bringing their voice down with me. So language, I think like using code switching as a term is like kind of characterizes it, and also not totally applicable for like every person who has to, like, for some people this is a survival skill. In my work, that might look like being called to do a medical assessment for somebody who is about to be potentially arrested, but they just found that they have like a fat abscess on their arm. And I, know things about like injection drug use. And so I'm talking to a person, I'm like, yeah, I know, like you can go to exchange and talk to Dr. Bill, but that was last night. Like, dude, like we just really need to get you some antibiotics. And like, I think I can swing this. So we might be able to bring you to the hospital instead of jail. And then I might turn to law enforcement and be like, well, the patient is like extremely hypertensive. We are really worried that this meets our medical director's criteria for sepsis. And this is just something that is like so acute that it really can't. So I'm going to try to use the same circumstances and use different language to try to advocate in both directions. Okay.
Oh, can I jump in there?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, there's a question from the audience that was about racial identity. So because most of the photos in your slideshow are showing, or all I think are showing CAHOOTS
literally
staff people who are white, right? Yeah, so the question was, how does CAHOOTS ensure that volunteers do not present as white saviors? That's interesting.
Oh my God, yeah, constant conversation. kind of unrelated, we're also like, most of us are full-time employees because it takes 6 months of training. So within that 6 months of training, we do not stand for like fixers. And that's actually a huge red flag if we have people come in and like cannot get over the idea that they are not trying to fix someone. They are not able to have a conversation about substance use without asking somebody when they plan to get sober. We are not going to tolerate somebody who thinks that every homeless person needs to be in a shelter, and how could people not want that when we know that those institutions, like if you ask somebody on the street what they want to as a living situation, nobody is going to tell you, God, I just wish there was a great homeless shelter. So we need to exist outside of like this social work savior system, because like we do not have that. I would also say, you know, like that is like a conflict of like us being catapulted into this conversation around like anti-racism and police and abolition. Like we aren't there. And I think a lot of that has to do with like kind of our labor conditions and the fact that we have taken this approach of like selling our model as like a cost cutting option instead of like a fully fledged valid public safety program that is not just like doing things that like smell too bad for the cops to handle, or we're not just like taking the like unwantables. Yeah, and we have like perhaps a more like diverse team than is photographed, and it's like not profoundly different and problematic. A big deficit in our community is that in Springfield we have a 14% Latinx community who like cannot and will not access us, both because like we do not have always a bilingual option, we do frequently have a bilingual option, and because it goes through law enforcement dispatching, so they are concerned about giving that information over. So that's why I say like, oh my God, as many first responder options of meeting people where they are at. It is often an emergency of resource, not an emergency of safety. And 911 does not have a wait list. Every doctor, therapist, social service in town does. So tapping out, having these conversations like we talked about, this is what I can and can't do. This is what I feel confident in. This is what might trigger me today. That all is creating a trust and relationship, so that if your partner or somebody around says like, oh God, like Kimber here in this car is like too close, she's getting too wrapped in, like I got to swing her back. I'm going to come up to her and like we have our like predetermined language of like, hey, I got this. Or using tools, like I might say to the client like, hey, like we really want to think about this, we want to come up with a good plan, so and this is important to us, so we're going to step aside and have a conversation. And never having that conversation in front of the person we are trying to serve. But if it feels like we can kind of address it, because maybe like after an hour I am not going to jump into the counseling as the medic, it's really important that that negotiation doesn't get wrapped in, because then we're asking ourselves like, whose crisis is it? So this is a really good system. Again, have set ahead of time and understanding so that the conflict does not unfold during the call. For us, it's a call. And someone might see what you do not see. So in this situation, Kimber has no, like half of her vision, if not more, is completely blocked out. And if my partner comes up to me and says like, hey, I got this, can we come over here? I might not see that there's like, 1,000 horses stampeding to the left of me. So we have to have that trust. Okay, so whose crisis is it? This is why we need to remain grounded. And this is also the harm reduction strategy. We cannot work harder than the client is, and we cannot be attached to outcomes. And this is one, like, absolutely for me, I have to check, because as someone who is going to like do as much work as appropriate as I can to keep somebody out of jail, to keep somebody out of a system that I don't think they belong in, I want to do too much, a lot. And like knowing how systems work, where it's like somebody might say to me like, oh, I want to go to Lane County Behavioral Health, and I'm like, oh my God, but I know you work with the other agency that meets all your needs, and I know you're mad at them right now, but oh, if I could just like try to mediate with your therapist, what can I do? That is not my place. I need to listen to them and advocate within what they are asking for. And yeah, this is like huge. This is a factor in every single call. And if I attach myself to every single outcome, I would not be doing this work. I would be a client, and every call would take 6 hours, and CAHOOTS would never actually prevent the outcomes that we do now, because we wouldn't be responding to nearly as many calls as we are now.
Can I jump in with one more question? I know this is your last slide. It's just such a good moment for this. Actually, these two questions. One person asked if you could talk a bit about de-escalating situations where you, the de-escalator, are part of the situation, and maybe you're in the way of harm. So for example, what if I'm a store clerk closing up and someone has broken into the business to raid the cash register? But I'm also thinking like, I don't want to put words in this person's mouth, but you know, like when you jump into a situation, sometimes you can be not always welcome. And someone else asked,
oh, totally, if
you know, maybe when you're off the clock, you've ever run into people who weren't exactly pleased with the way things went last time, or yeah, and if you've ever had to manage those interactions and how that might differ.
I don't think I've ever had somebody approach me off the clock about an interaction we had. And I also think that speaks to that very weird thing of like, the second I put on this radio, I have like this access and this presence, and like absolutely the way I get like treated is very differently than when I'm not wearing that radio, but like still wearing like Doc Martens and Levi's. And I think like, that being said, a lot of these photos, again, that were photographed, show us outside, show us as people who live outside, or are kind of not, none of them are in houses. So we work with like about 60% of who we work with is unhoused, and the other 40% are people in houses. It's just people don't see that, so they don't know that we do that work. Yeah, so those are kind of more the situations where I might have an encounter with somebody in the community, but I've never been approached about that. And that's something that I would be like, probably give a container of time to, and be like, okay, I have 10 minutes to talk about this, and really like keep reminding like, okay, like I have 5 more minutes, and then maybe redirect as to not like fully engage off the clock. Do I engage in crises off the clock? I do. And again, I put that like boundary of time in my mind as well. That's huge for me. And as far as the other question, like that is never a call that CAHOOTS would be dispatched to. And that being said, like that sort of escalated like caliber of a situation is something that we might end up in circumstantially. Maybe the person I'm helping like just like had like a hot argument, and now that person is approaching, and we have to totally redirect to be like, whoa, this just went from like doing wound care to this person is coming up to fight you. That is when we really have to slow down. That is when we have to think about like, what do we need to do to be able to show up at all? Do we need to give distance? We might like try to step away and engage with like the person who is more agitated. I would say in the situation of shop worker and person who is doing like an armed robbery or whatever, I'm gonna engage the shop owner, because that is somebody who is probably needing some problem solving that I might be able to help navigate. And kind of in that situation too, so if the shop's full, we're going to start figuring out how to get people out too. Kind of that removing the audience thing, and also creating an environment of safety for as many people as possible. Yeah, that might not fully answer that question, but it's also like everything is really based on space too, like what kind of space I'm operating in. Extremely huge that you are always between a human and the door. So you never want somebody to be standing in front of your door. And that is something that we really have to negotiate when we enter people's homes. You want to be like, oh my God, no, come sit down. And we're like, oh, we sit in a van all day. We're good. We're happy standing. So you find ways to like say what you need to while still getting what you need. Yes, if for whatever reason in that sort of situation, I don't know, or a different one, and my coworker wants to feel safe enough to engage with the other human and I'm engaging with the shop owner, we might try to kind of direct so they're looking at each other. I want to try to get them to not look at each other. And then me and my partner are talking to them and we have eye contact. And I could be 100 feet away, but this person I work with 12 hours a week, like, and we are deeply intuitive with each other. So we're still able to communicate with eye contact. And we're not in between the people who are escalated. So that's another big one in our situations that might get a little bit more like physically risky or something. Yes. And if like there is like a need to like separate, we're gonna really communicate that with my partner. Like, hey, I'm going to the van to grab the med bag. And I'll be right back. Hey, I'm back. Hey, I have to take a blood pressure, so I need to take out my earpiece so I can put the stethoscope in. So constant communication with ourselves. Sorry about the motorcycle. There is one more thing. We'll see if it comes back. Okay. This one is like a huge like gates opened when this became a really big part of my counseling. Because I think as helpers and as like perhaps a world and community who are trying to figure out how to build a true like affinity with other groups that they want to advocate for, show up for, provide mutual aid for, and not just be providers, that there's like that rapport building, that getting the history can be really intense. And to what extent is like sitting down with somebody and letting them tell you their whole childhood trauma history helpful if I'm waiting for a bus and when that bus comes I have to say like, oh, and now I got to go to work, like see you tomorrow, and now that person is sitting there like completely exposed and nobody there to like hold where they are at now. So that like it's it's a gauge for every situation. When somebody is suicidal, so often that is a symptom of all of the stressors, all of the things. And so if I give space to that history, to the story, to the precipitating events, I'm finding out what the actual problem is, and I'm not taking the way the call came in at face value, versus if I go straight to problem solving, I'm only treating it as what somebody else called it. And so I'm kind of creating that container of time to get history. And if I feel like we're going to a place that like might not be helpful, I've figured out some kind of like skills around that where it's like, hey, like I really care about you, but I know like what we showed up for today was like also really intense. So I kind of want to talk about that because it's great to get to know you, and I want to make sure like we have time to get your needs met right now. Um, or like telling somebody like this is like really important. But I don't really want you to like be mean to yourself by talking about every bad thing that's ever happened. Like I kind of like we're here and like let's talk about what we can do. Um Very often like callers might like think they're doing like I might show up at a like PCP's office, like a physician doctor's office who has a suicidal patient, and this doesn't happen often. And we walk in and we have the receptionist who was like, oh, CAHOOTS is here, CAHOOTS is here, and like whispers it to the phone caller, and then the phone caller dials back to the peer support advocate who then is going to come and lead me, and now the nurse is telling me the thing and the doctor is telling me the thing, and we're all in the room with the patient, and it's just like too many cooks. We've now made this thing a lot bigger. So teams of two to stay safe, and also like within all of the wild things that CAHOOTS does, we are only a team of two. So that is like really good in the other direction of like too many voices can be escalating, unhelpful, go too far. I'm a crisis counselor, I'm not a therapist, and I don't have therapy skills at all. So again, kind of nodding to like it's generally basic needs not getting met that put people in a very vulnerable state of crisis, with all other intersections implied. And so often I'm getting that history, I'm hearing, I'm building the rapport. You know, this person maybe just got out of jail to them having an eviction notice on their front door, and they're now that they were in jail, they lost their social security and they got cut off of Medicaid, and so they can't get their prescriptions, and the surgery that they were scheduled next month might not happen. And you know, on May 8th, 1990, I was born, and it's been terrible ever since then, and I'm hungry. So giving space to all of that, knowing that the only need I can meet is getting somebody less hungry. And that if I start right off the bat and I'm like, well, I can't help you with any of that, but here's a granola bar that is providing the same resource, like tangibly, materially, and not at all in a real way, in my opinion. This like last little quote is, so I work night shifts. When I was a case manager, it was like every Friday at 4:45 p.m. is when people are like, I need to get on food stamps and Social Security. And it's like, oh my God, I cannot fill out that form with you right now, nor is that office open. People call us, and it's horrific because this might be their first time reaching out for mental health, behavioral health support. They call me at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, and they're like, bags are packed, I am ready to go to rehab. And I am the first voice of telling them like, that is not how it works. I don't have the ability to do that. And that could be either like the worst interaction ever, or that could be a really wonderful counseling session that reminds somebody that they are already doing the work. And on the kind of spectrum of change under harm reduction, like the point of which you're reaching out, you have already gotten to the point of making that change. Okay, I am super available to stay longer than the next 3 minutes, but also here we are. Thank you so much for listening to me talk so much.
Chelsea, it's great. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Do you want to go ahead and stop screen share? And
oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then if anyone, we might just be, oh no, you can see people, cool, okay. I was like, maybe everyone's turned off their video. If you'd like to not be on video at this point, just shut it off. It's totally normal and fine. Yeah, let's stay a little bit longer if people can, because I've seen a couple of questions come into the chat now. And if you need to take off, please go ahead and just, if you need to give any feedback to me that you weren't able to give during this talk, just send me an email. You've got my email address. I'm happy to talk with you more. We've got really good stuff in the chat.
Yeah.
2 people actually wrote to me and asked me if you have any advice, or if CAHOOTS has any experience in de-escalating interactions between BIPOC and police. And yeah, just I'll leave that open for you.
Yeah. The collective mind is incredible. And like the content that has presented itself in the last few months, like this content might be intense. So I just want to like prepare folks for that, just in terms of like kind of like violence and suicidality, and as it pertains to police violence. But like I have had somebody who was being arrested and is screaming Black Lives Matter and screaming at the cops to make them say Black Lives Matter, and I am like literally on the ground with them, like trying to like advocate through that moment and holding that space, and making sure that that interaction stays safe, and knowing that my presence, like the audience piece, is huge, because we know that body cameras prevent or hold no accountability at all. I have had I had a call, and like this is probably the pretty intense one, where somebody was really kind of manic and psychotic, and their suicidal ideation was like suffocating themselves for like the same amount of time that George Floyd was suffocated. And that conversation was happening in front of police. And their discomfort is like extremely evident right now in our community, because we do, for our small city, we're having a lot of action in the streets. And so while we've always shown up in this way, it is very charged in all directions, and that is seeping out. I have had a lot of teenagers, like BIPOC teenagers, who are like escalating with the parents, and they are screaming at the cops like that they hate them. And that is like, it's not a new phenomenon, but it's like now kind of a commonplace phenomenon. And that it might be one where like I'm going to stay with that person, and I might try to like kind of nudge my coworker, like, do you think, like, I don't know, how can you gauge the cops? How can we finding ourselves like doing some like emotional labor for cops afterwards, who are like all like kind of, because they have rapport with us, like speaking to how that's difficult for them, knowing that sometimes like that maybe is helpful. That can really become a whose crisis is it moment, where maybe the cop is like more triggered than the client is. And it's like it's valid, and we don't try to shut people down, because we don't shut people down about anything, so why would I stop there? I don't want to ramble on too much, so I want to take another question. And there's so much there. There's like so much there.
Yeah, thanks. Just it's nice to put a bookmark in that and think about revisiting it over time.
Yeah.
So let's see. Another good question we have is whether CAHOOTS offers anti-racist training to their own employees. Yeah, and how you, yeah, is that right? CAHOOTS employees. I hope I understood that question right.
That's how I read it. Circumstantially, and like our agency is called Whitebird Clinic. We have never had a director, well, a clinic coordinator, because we're a horizontal structure, who hasn't been like an old white guy. Like there is a lot of work to do. And born out of this need that keeps being reiterated from the Latinx community. We in April did like 5 weeks of anti-racist training and implicit bias training with our staff. And it like that took up our like regular meeting space, so it kind of like forced the hand of really having to engage over a long period of time, and really taking that into not just like here's a training, but like here's a conversation, here's a situation where like the coworker could bring a situation to the trainer, not just in that space that then the trainer could bring back for us to reflect on. So that was a really good process that is continuing on in directions of like, and this happened to be going on when George Floyd was killed and the uprising began. So we were like 4 weeks into that 5-week process. Like, thank God. And so we're doing some restorative justice trainings where the person who facilitated that we like paid to do the anti-racist trainings is also like consulting to form a like consumer council specific around like BIPOC and other marginalized communities in our area to get our feedback, and also create possibly like a pathway to carry their concerns and our in our own advocacy in the direction of law enforcement, where we get to sit at a table and have those conversations in the context where like law enforcement might hear us in a different way. And we've also like radically restructured recently. There's like a impetus to look at doing things really differently, and we like radically restructured our admin team and the accountability within that moved us from having like 2 kind of co-program managers to spreading those roles out and to like a group of about 10 people, where we now have like much different representation. We created time and hours in a position for like a bilingual expansion program to like train us and to create actual accessibility for folks who aren't able to access us right now because of language. So there's like a lot of ongoing stuff, because like those photos you saw are reflective of like who can do this job right now within our work environment. So we need to change we needed to change our structures. We need to get paid more. We need to like have more social supports and not kind of put ourselves in the category of like social service martyr, because like when I show up in a officer who I know makes 3 times as much as me, time and time again says, oh, I don't know what we would do without you. Or a paramedic who makes $90,000 a year is like, oh my God, I wouldn't even want to do this job if I did CAHOOTS. Or if we didn't have CAHOOTS. I had a lieutenant tell me lieutenants make like over 100 grand. I almost took a job at a different agency, but I did not, because I did not have a CAHOOTS like program. And it's just like, it hurts. Like they think they're complimenting us, and it like feels bad. So I don't think we have like the safest and most accessible workplace for people who aren't like young and up till this point white, for the really most part.
Man, thanks for that.
Yeah.
There's this really great question. We've had police unexpectedly arrive in our home for a wellness check on a person. The situation escalated quickly and almost got worse. Eventually, the human was taken to the hospital. In a situation like that, would CAHOOTS have a medic in a van to assess the individual, so you would avoid forcible removal?
Cool. Yeah. Welfare checks are on #1 call. And that can mean a lot. And a lot of them are showing up at private residences for like, I haven't heard from my friend in 2 weeks, and that's really unusual. I live in Kentucky, and my friend in Eugene made suicidal statements on Facebook. So that is like, we get most of those calls on. And so again, to like kind of make it clear, we get dispatched through the same non-emergency line that somebody would access the fire department or the police department for. So it's, instead of saying like, and sorry, in our county, the fire department means medical services too. So we're just another option in the triage tools that those call takers take. So something that we might not get dispatched to is a suicidal subject who said on Facebook that they have a gun and that's their means that they want to use, and we're not able to get a hold of them to confirm if that gun is secured or not. So they might send police to like clear the scene for safety, but we will be staged around the corner waiting to respond. And most of the time that looks like them saying the scene is safe and then they leave. A welfare check that we are not typically sent on is like one where a neighbor calls in a possible like DV situation. However, like if that is coming in as like a counseling request, that's something we would be sent to. So it's unbelievably subjective. If that neighbor says like, hey, I think my neighbor needs counseling, can you do a welfare check? We're gonna go. If that caller says, I hear my neighbor screaming and there might be violence, because I don't know, maybe there was that one time and I think I heard a baby crying, but maybe it was the TV, like they'll send police to that. So we all know how details can be manipulated over the phone by people to get the response that they want. Luckily, in our case, we can kind of coach people on what will put them at risk of not getting a CAHOOTS response. And then in terms of taking people against their will, because we do not do that, that is a huge part of how everything that we talked about really freaking works. And it speaks to like our average call time is about 45 minutes, but like that is with an average of where we give somebody a bottle of water or where we spend 3 hours trying to convince somebody to come with us if we feel that they really need it. Our caliber is very, very high for when we think somebody's rights need to be taken away. That is how I am always framing it, to make sure I'm not saying like, oh, this person just needs help. It's like, does this person meet a threshold where I think their rights need to be taken away?
Thank you so much for that. I think I'll go ahead and let that be the last question. I've noticed people are starting to leave, so people might have other commitments or just be tired since 8:40.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question today. And if you'd like, I can follow up with Swift over email. Actually, I think you might even have Swift's email in here. Or if not, maybe you can just drop it in there.
Michelle,
yeah, so,
your sentiments, sorry, but the last thing, yeah. Michelle, your sentiments are really great. And a lot of the time we are diminishing its reach. And it is it's an alternative, but to be an alternative means that something else still exists. So we are absolutely part of the same chain of the system. Cool, yeah. Thank you. And I can talk forever about that, so thank you for
that. Yeah, no, it's so good. Yeah. All right, well, I hope everyone came away feeling a bit more empowered and a bit more educated. And I also hope, I don't know if anyone was sitting here and watching these slides and thinking, yeah, of course that's what you do, because we all have these experiences in our life of de-escalating situations, and we can all find a little bit more empowerment in our own lives and addressing situations in our own communities. So I'm also hopeful that like what you got from this is that you already have these skills, and it's just a matter of practicing them over time. And we're going to get it wrong, and hopefully we'll reduce harm over time. Okay, a few housekeeping things. So I have a quick straw poll just to see, I'm just curious, whoever's left in here, what you want to see next. This kind of gets at, I think it was Diane's question earlier, like what Swift would recommend we do next. And actually at the last teach-in, the social worker from Ramsey County, Danny Hicks, gave us a bunch of resources that we could explore. So I just want to ask you what you, people in this room, are interested in doing next. All right. So I've tried to launch a poll. I've never done this in Zoom before. Okay, yeah, and maybe this won't work so well if you're joining on your phone. Maybe it works a little bit better on the laptop. Let's see, so the question says, if this were a series, I don't know, what do you wish would be next? You can select as many as you want. Maybe you want written resources like alternatives to police guide. Maybe you want more of an open discussion with other attendees to just react and process what you've learned. Maybe you want more de-escalation training. So maybe more practical things or something interactive, I don't know. Narcan training, first aid and CPR training. Another teach-in, like maybe there are other speakers or experts in the area you'd like to hear from, or you just wish you're kind of zoomed out and you just wish we were in person. Not mutually exclusive. You can click all those things and still click that box. Boy, I don't know if you can see the responses, but everyone's interested in all the things. So we've got most people saying that they'd like more de-escalation training, and then more of everything else. So yeah. Only a few of you wish you were in person. That's very interesting. All right, I'll go ahead and just end polling in case that's the way you see the results here. There we go.
That was cool. I like this a lot.
Can you see the poll results? I don't even understand what's happening on your screen. Okay, great.
Yeah, probably
right.
samesies.
And then, yeah, so I was going to ask sort of a formal poll if you'd like the video trimmed. I'm just going to make sure that no one is identifiable in the video that I share on YouTube, and that'll be the simplest way to go about it. So I'll just trim either end of it. But if you have any other concerns about that, just let me know. And then you should be able to share it with anyone. Give me a little bit of time to get it on there. It was sort of a new thing for me, but I figured it out. Okay. Gosh, I didn't write any closing words, but I'm just so excited that we all came today, and I hope that this was useful for you. And I hope your evening is relaxing and rejuvenating, and that you sleep on this knowledge and wake up feeling recharged. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, how are you? I think we're here with a massage therapist.
Eddie feels very de-escalated.
Oh, so calm, so fluffy.
Yeah, kitty.
Oh. Are you home? Are you home now?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
I'm out of quarantine. I can hang out anytime. Not that we were really quarantining. It was so weird. Like, we did a really bad job. like at first it was like, you know, because he was going on this, Raymond was going on this road trip, and he was like, okay, so we need to quarantine. And I was like, wow, okay, like this is extreme. And then he started like picking up takeout food, and then he went to the grocery store a couple of times, and I was like, oh, okay, so we're not actually quarantining. But then like I was about to go to books on Sunday, right? And he was like, oh no, you can't do that. And then I was like, oh, so we are quarantining, like I can't see my friends. Anyway, so silly. When is your actual birthday?
My actual birthday is Saturday.
Yay! Okay, so exciting. Yeah.
Oh, Kitty. Kitty is being very needy right now.
Yeah.
How's your pooch?
He is, oh, I turned off my camera, so I don't know if you can see. Show selfie, that's it. He's falling over.
Oh, can't get up.
Yeah, but I have a new, you can't, she's not here right now, but I have a cat box next to my computer now.
No?
Yeah, and the cat goes in there and sleeps while I work
Oh,
at the kitchen table. Yeah, it's nice.
have you already connected with Alex and Rachel, or should I text them?
Oh, I haven't. Yeah, do you want to text them?
Sure, if I have both their numbers. I may or may not.
Oh, then I'll text them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I'll just make it a big old group thread.
Cool. Great job on this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Recording.
Somebody said, I would like to follow up later. I teach empowerment, self-defense, and bystander intervention.
That sounds awesome. Can you please do that?
What is empowerment, self-defense? I want that.
I want that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like a self-defense de-escalation would be fun.
Yeah. In a park?
Yeah, and like I think part of de-escalation is like knowing that you have other tools so that you're not afraid, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if this happened, I know I could deal with it, so therefore I can be calm right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're great. You did
You're
great.
great. Yeah.
Swift is awesome.
You're right near Como, right?
Yeah, I'm like 2 blocks from the golf course.
Is it raining right now? I'm about to go there. Do you want to go on a romp?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Well, do you drive or do you walk up here?
No, I drive up there. It's too far at night.
Yeah. Yeah, I would totally go for a walk. It was thundering like an hour ago, but it calmed down.
I haven't been outside. I wonder if it's like really, I'll look at the radar. It looks like it's sort of clear.
Yeah, I'd go for a walk.
Oh my God, we can still see the live. I didn't realize it's still closed captioning.
Great.
All right, cool. Where do you want to meet? You want to meet at the
boathouse?
The boathouse.
Pavilion?
Yeah, that you know that spot by the golf course?
Spot, like the parking lot?
Yeah, where you would normally park to go skiing.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll gather my things. I assume it will take me a little longer to walk here than for you to drive there. So, oh, Panda.
Yeah, he knows.
Oh.
Do you know, buddy? We're going to the park. You're gonna romp. You're gonna be so bad. Yeah. Yeah.
Stop that. Cat keeps trying to scratch the couch.
Yeah, does he need a romp too? Maybe we should take him.
Yeah. He slept all day today. Anyway, I'll give you all the updates of Kitty.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll see you in a little bit.
See you in a bit.